The sliding door to room 704 hissed open, with the sound of a dying cat revealing a space that smelled faintly of ozone and cheap recycled lemon scent. Harry Caldwell did not care about the smell. He did not care that the carpet was a shade of brown that suggested it had given up on life 3 decades ago. He did not even care that the panoramic viewport he had been promised was actually a porthole the size of a dinner plate, currently displaying a riveting view of a waste disposal vent. All Harry cared about was the bed. He dropped his heavy duffel bag. It hit the floor with a solid thud, the sound of a man's entire life, savings and portable anxieties coming to rest. He was exhausted. It was not a normal tiredness. It was a bone-deep, soul-grinding fatigue that came from spending 48 hours in transit on a freighter that vibrated enough to loosen dental fillings. He had come to Kestrel Halo Station for one reason: to disappear into the anonymity of a winter holiday crowd and sleep until the nightmares of his father stopped playing on the back of his eyelids. "Okay," Harry muttered to himself, rubbing his face with hands that still smelled of engine grease. Sleep first, existential crisis later. He stepped fully into the room, the door sliding shut behind him. He reached for the light panel, but the lights were already on. Harry blinked. The room was small, designed for efficiency rather than comfort. It was dominated by a single, queen-sized bed, and currently, that bed was occupied. Sitting in the center of the mattress legs, crossed with the poise of a queen holding court on a throne of skulls, was a woman. She was pale, her skin the color of moonlight on snow, contrasting sharply with the tactical stealth suit that clung to her lean frame. Her hair was a waterfall of obsidian, and her eyes were covered by a thin, translucent visor that glowed with a faint, violet hum. Standing beside the bed, leaning against the wall with arms crossed, was a second woman. She looked younger, sharper, like a jagged piece of glass. She wore a similar suit, but hers was scuffed, worn at the elbows. In her right hand, she idly spun a device that looked like a dagger handle, but instead of steel, a blade of solidified red energy, bloodlight, hummed into existence, retracting and extending in a hypnotic rhythm. Harry stood there, his hands still hovering near the light switch. He looked at the room number on his keycard. 704. He looked back at the women. The woman on the bed, Dora, tilted her head slightly. The movement was predatory fluid. The woman with the knife, Betty, stopped spinning her weapon. The red blade extended fully, casting a harsh, crimson glow over the cheap, lemon-scented room. "Occupied," Betty said. Her voice was scratchy, like boots on gravel. Harry stared. His brain currently running on caffeine fumes, and denial tried to process the visual data. These were Noctari, the vampire kin, the species that lived in the void between stars, allergic to unfiltered solar radiation, dependent on bloodlight energy to stabilize their cellular decay. They were not supposed to be in the budget sector of a tourist station. They were supposed to be in high-security diplomatic spires or terrifying bedtime stories. Harry let out a long, ragged sigh. He dropped his hand from the switch. "I paid," Harry said, his voice cracking slightly. 150 credits for this room. It was a non-refundable flash sale deal. Dora spoke then. Her voice was smoother than her sister's, cold and clear as ice water. "Then you overpaid." "There is only one bed," Harry pointed out, gesturing vaguely at the mattress Dora was monopolizing. "Yes," Dora said. "We noticed." "I paid for at least half a mattress," Harry tried, though the red hum of Betty's knife was making a very compelling argument for him to sleep in the hallway. "Look, can we call the front desk? Maybe there is a double booking." "I just want to sleep." "I am not looking for trouble," Betty laughed. It was a short, sharp sound. "He thinks he has a choice, Dora. Cute." Betty pushed off the wall. She moved faster than a human should, blurring slightly before reappearing directly in front of Harry. The heat from the bloodlight blade radiated against Harry's neck. He could smell the ozone coming off it, a smell of burning air. "Who sent you?" Betty hissed. "Was it Kale?" Did the magistrate send a courier in a mechanic's jumpsuit to lower our guard? What? No one sent me. Harry backed up until his spine hit the door. I am a tourist. I am here for the snow festival. I have a voucher for a free hot chocolate. Dora stood up. She was taller than Harry expected. She walked over, placing a hand on Betty's shoulder to pull her back an inch. Dora leaned in her visor, scanning Harry's face. He is telling the truth, Betty, Dora said softly. His pulse is elevated, but it is the rhythm of fear, not deception. And he smells of cheap coffee and regret. Thank you, Harry said, offended, despite the knife at his throat. That is the signature scent of my people. Why this room? Dora asked, ignoring his sarcasm. Why did you book this specific unit? It was cheap, Harry insisted. 70% off. It popped up on my datapad while I was docked at the refueling ring. Special offer for enterprising travelers. I thought I got lucky. Dora and Betty exchanged a look. A silent communication passed between them, a sisterly shorthand of eyebrows and micro-expressions. It was a trap, Betty said, deactivating her blade with a snap. Or a glitch in their net. This room is a dead drop, Dora. The code he used to book it matches the encryption key for the data fragment. Harry frowned. Data fragment? Look, I do not know what kind of spy games you are playing, but I am extremely tired. Can I just take the floor or the bathtub? We are not playing, Dora said. She walked back to the bed and picked up a small, shimmering drive chip that had been resting on the pillow. We just stole this from a secure server 2 levels up. Security is sweeping the grid. We diverted the booking system to keep this room empty, so we could extract the data, but apparently the station AI decided to monetize the vacancy. Harry closed his eyes and pinched the bridge of his nose. So, because I like a bargain, I am now roommates with 2 fugitive Noctari carrying stolen property. Correct, Betty said, hopping onto the desk and swinging her legs. Congratulations. You are now an accessory. Before Harry could formulate a protest involving the words legal counsel and refund, the room's ambient lighting turned a violent, flashing crimson. A siren began to wail, a low mechanical groan that vibrated through the floorboards. Whoop, whoop, whoop. A holographic projection flickered to life in the center of the room, overriding the safety protocols. The face of a man appeared magnified and severe. He had a jawline that could cut glass, and eyes that looked like they had been surgically removed of all warmth. It was Director Soren Kale, the head of station security. Attention citizens and guests of Kestrel Halo, Kale's voice boomed smooth and terrifyingly calm. This is a Code Nightfall declaration. I repeat, Code Nightfall. Harry felt his stomach drop. Code Nightfall was not a drill. It was a total station lockdown. Moments ago, Kale continued, a tragedy occurred in the diplomatic spire. Ambassador Vorex has been assassinated. Witnesses described the assailants as 2 female combatants of Noctari descent, utilizing illegal bloodlight weaponry. Harry looked at Betty. Betty shrugged, twirling the handle of her weapon. We did not kill him. We just knocked his teeth out. He was talking too much. Due to the severe nature of this attack, Kale's voice went on, and the threat of further violence, Kestrel Halo is now under full lockdown. All transport permissions are revoked. Sector blast doors are sealing. Security teams are conducting a compartment-by-compartment sweep. Do not resist. Identify any Noctari individuals to the nearest patrol unit immediately. They are considered armed and extremely dangerous. The hologram flickered out, replaced by the station's logo, rotating slowly in red. Silence filled the small room heavier than before. Well, Harry said into the quiet, that sounds bad. He killed the ambassador, Dora said, her voice dropping an octave. She fastened the drive chip to her belt. Kale, he killed the ambassador to cover up what is on this drive. And now he is pinning it on us. And they are sweeping compartment by compartment, Betty added. She looked at the door. They will be here in 10 minutes, maybe 5. Harry looked at his duffel bag. He looked at the bed he would not be sleeping in. He looked at the vents. "I need to leave," Harry said. "If they find me with you, I go to prison. Or out an airlock." "You cannot leave," Dora said. "The corridors are sensor-locked. If you step out alone, you will be detained for questioning. If we step out alone, we will be shot on sight." "So we are trapped," Harry said. "Not necessarily," Dora said. She turned her visor toward Harry, and for a moment, the violet glow intensified. "We need a localized disruption, and we need camouflage." "I am not wearing a wig," Harry said instinctively. "We need a cover," Dora corrected. "You are a human tourist. We are exotic companions, or dancers. The narrative does not matter as long as we pass the visual inspection at the sector checkpoint." "No," Harry said, backing up. "No way. I am not smuggling fugitives past Kale's stormtroopers. I came here to forget my problems, not become a headline." "You are already a headline, Dork," Betty said, jumping off the desk. "You use the booking code. The moment security runs your ID, they will see you reserved the dead drop room. You are already flagged as our accomplice. Your only chance is if we get this data to the transmission tower and prove Kale is lying." Harry stared at her. The logic was cold, brutal, and undeniably sound. He had walked into a trap simply by being cheap. "I hate this station," Harry whispered. "I hate it so much." "Grab your bag," Dora commanded. "We are moving." The corridor outside was chaos, but a restrained, terrifying kind of chaos. The holiday music, a synthesized version of Jingle Bells, was still playing cheerfully over the intercoms, creating a dissonant soundtrack to the panic. Tourists were being heralded into holding zones by security drones. Blast doors were sliding shut at the far ends of the hallway, sealing the sector. Harry walked quickly, his head down, clutching his bag. Dora walked on his left, Betty on his right. They had engaged the active camouflage on their suits, dulling the tactical matte black into something that looked like high-end avant-garde clubwear. It wasn't perfect, but in the flashing red emergency lights, they looked less like assassins and more like expensive escorts. "Keep your head up," Dora murmured, her hand gripping Harry's arm with a strength that bruised. "Act like you belong. You are an annoyed tourist inconveniently interrupted." "I do not have to act," Harry hissed back. "I am terrified." "Channel it into entitlement," Betty whispered from the other side. "Humans are great at entitlement." They reached the intersection leading to the lift tubes. A checkpoint had been hastily erected. 4 security officers in heavy riot gear stood behind a kinetic barrier, scanning IDs. Behind them, a drone hovered its scanner, sweeping the crowd. Harry's heart hammered against his ribs like a trapped bird. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. Ahead of them, a commotion broke out. A young mother, a human woman carrying a heavy winter coat, was arguing with a guard. Her child, a boy no older than 6, had drifted through the kinetic barrier before it fully activated. Now he was on the secure side, and she was on the suspect side. "He is just a boy," the mother screamed. "Let him back through, or let me through." "Stand back, citizen," the guard barked, his voice amplified by his helmet. "Sector is sealed. No movement across the line until clearance is verified." "He is scared," the woman cried, reaching for the barrier. The energy field sparked, stinging her hand. She recoiled, sobbing. The boy on the other side was crying, looking at the faceless, armored giants surrounding him. Harry stopped. Dora pulled on his arm. "Ignore it. We need to use the confusion to slip into the maintenance hatch on the left. The guards are distracted." "Move, Harry," Betty urged. "Not our problem." Harry looked at the hatch. It was open. It was safe. He could slip in there, disappear into the dark, and maybe survive this night. Then he looked at the boy. The kid was trembling, clutching a stuffed robotic penguin. Harry remembered that tremble. He remembered being 7 years old, standing in a spaceport terminal, watching his father walk away toward a boarding gate, waiting for a wave that never came. He remembered the coldness of being small in a universe designed for the big and the indifferent. Damn it, Harry cursed. He didn't turn toward the maintenance hatch. He turned toward the guards. Harry, Dora hissed. Harry marched up to the barrier, his fear suddenly transmuted into a strange, shaky anger. Hey, officer! The guard turned, weapon raised slightly. Back away! That is a kid, Harry said, pointing. You are station security, right? Your job is to keep order, not traumatize kindergartners. Open the field for 2 seconds. Let the kid back to his mom. Sir, this is a lockdown. The guard stepped forward. Interference is a Class C felony. And stupidity is a universal constant, apparently, Harry snapped. Look at him. He is not a Noctari assassin. Unless the vampires are recruiting toddlers now, is that the intel? The absurdity of the statement made the guard pause. The crowd behind Harry murmured in agreement. Phone cameras started coming up, recording the standoff. Let the kid go, someone shouted from the back. The guard looked at the crowd, then at the crying boy, then at the drone recording everything. Cale wanted order, not a PR riot. Fine, the guard grunted. He deactivated the field for a blink. Kid, move, now. The boy scrambled back to his mother. The crowd cheered softly. The mother looked at Harry, eyes wet with gratitude. Thank you, she mouthed. Harry nodded his knees, suddenly feeling like jelly. Yeah, you are welcome. He turned back to where Dora and Betty were supposed to be. They were gone. No, not gone. They had used the moment the eyes of the guards fixed on Harry to slip past the sensors and flank the checkpoint. A hand grabbed Harry's collar from the shadows of a structural pillar. He was yanked sideways into a narrow service alcove. Dora pinned him against the cold metal wall. Her visor was retracted now, revealing eyes that were entirely black iris and sclera, merged into a void of obsidian liquid. You are an idiot, Dora said. But her tone wasn't angry. It was confused. I could not leave him, Harry panted. You risked our lives for a stranger's offspring, Betty said, appearing beside Dora. She looked at Harry, like he was a puzzle piece that didn't fit. Why? Because, Harry stammered, some of us have to live in this universe after tonight. Before they could interrogate his morality further, heavy boots clambered on the grating above them. Sweep the lower vents. They cannot have gone far. That is Cale's personal guard. Dora noted, her head tilting, to listen to footsteps 3 floors up. They are tracking the biometric signature of the data drive. We need to mask it. How? Betty asked. Biointerference, Dora said. She looked at Harry. We need to merge our signatures. Whoa, buy me a drink first, Harry said, panic rising again. Shut up, Dora said. She grabbed Harry's hand and slapped it against the panel of the service elevator behind them. She placed her hand over his, interlacing their fingers. Betty placed her hand on Harry's shoulder, her sharp nails digging into the fabric of his jacket. Act natural, Dora commanded. The elevator door opened, and they stumbled inside, just as a scanner beam swept the alcove they had occupied. Inside the elevator, the air was stale. The car began to descend into the bowels of the station toward the engineering decks, where the artificial gravity generators hummed. Harry slumped against the wall, sliding down until he hit the floor. I think I'm going to throw up. Just a little bit. In the corner. Hold it together, Betty said, though she sounded winded herself. We are not safe yet. Dora was pacing the small cage of the elevator. She looked at Harry, really looked at him for the second time. The contempt was fading, replaced by calculation. You created a distraction, Dora said. It was inefficient, dangerous, but effective. I did not do it for you, Harry muttered, closing his eyes. I know, Dora said. That is what makes it strange. The elevator shuddered and halted. The doors opened not to a corridor, but to a vast, dim cavern of machinery. This was the Snow Dome underbelly, the place where the magic was manufactured. Massive pipes pumped liquid nitrogen to the surface. Giant gears turned the rotational habitation rings. It was loud, hot, and industrial. "We need to cross the turbine hall," Dora said. "To get to the old comms array." They started walking along a narrow catwalk suspended over the grinding machinery. The drop below was easily 200 feet into darkness. Harry struggled to keep up. His duffel bag was heavy, and his legs felt like lead. "Why are you helping us?" Harry called out over the roar of a turbine. "You could have ditched me at the checkpoint." Betty looked back. "We need your code, remember. You are the key to the drop room. The data might need your bioprint to decrypt." "Oh," Harry said. "So I am a tool." "Everyone is a tool," Betty said. "Some are just sharper than others." Suddenly, a spotlight cut through the gloom. It hit them like a physical blow. "Halt." A skiff, a small security hover platform, dropped from the ceiling shadows. 3 officers stood on it, rifles trained on the catwalk. "Target acquired," one officer shouted into his comms. 2 Noctari subjects, 1 human collaborator. "Run!" Dora screamed. She did not wait. She shoved Harry forward. Betty leaped, clearing a 10-foot gap in the catwalk where a section had rusted away. She landed spun and ignited her bloodlight blade. She slashed the air, sending a crescent of red energy flying toward the skiff. It hit the pilot's stabilizer, causing the craft to lurch. Harry ran. He scrambled over pipes ducked under steaming vents. He was not a soldier. He was a guy who fixed navigation consoles for a living. He didn't run towards danger. He ran toward coffee breaks. But tonight, his legs pumped with a frantic energy he didn't know he possessed. The skiff recovered. Bullets sparked against the metal grating near Harry's feet. "Jump!" Dora yelled. Ahead, the catwalk ended. There was a gap leading to a maintenance chute. "Are you crazy?" Harry yelled. "Yes!" Betty laughed, and she jumped into the chute. Dora grabbed Harry's collar and threw him. He screamed, sailing through the air, flailing like a rag doll, before hitting the slanted metal of the chute. He slid down, spiraling into the darkness, with Dora landing gracefully behind him. They tumbled out onto a pile of insulation foam in a sub-basement room. It was quiet here. The roar of the machines was muffled. Harry groaned, rolling onto his back. "I am dead. I am definitely dead. This is hell. It smells like mildew." Dora stood up, brushing dust off her suit. She checked Betty, who was already checking her blade charge. "We lost them," Dora said. "For now." She reached down to help Harry up. It was a surprising gesture. Harry took her hand. As he was pulled to his feet, the movement dislodged something from beneath his shirt. His silver locket swung out, dangling in the dim emergency light. It was an old thing, analog and scratched. It popped open from the impact of the fall. Inside was not a picture, but a small, etched microplate with a complex geometric design, a family crest, but one that looked more like a circuit diagram. Dora froze. She stared at the locket. Her hand, which was still holding Harry's, tightened painfully. The violet light of her visor flickered and died, allowing Harry to see her eyes clearly. They were wide, the pupils blown distinct with shock. "Where did you get that?" Dora whispered. Her voice trembled. Harry pulled his hand away instinctively, clutching the locket. "It is my father's. He left it for me. It is just junk, a keepsake." Dora looked at Betty. Betty had stopped cleaning her blade. She was staring at the locket too, her expression unreadable. "Adrian," Dora said. It wasn't a question. It was a recognition. Harry stepped back, his back hitting a cold pipe. "How do you know that name? My father was just a structural engineer. He disappeared 15 years ago on a supply run." Dora stepped closer. The hostility was gone, replaced by a haunting intensity. She looked at Harry, not as a nuisance or a tool or a collaborator, but as a ghost. "He did not disappear on a supply run, Harry," Dora said softly. "What are you talking about?" Harry demanded, his voice rising. "Who are you people?" Dora reached out her finger, hovering inches from the locket, but not touching it, as if it were radioactive. "Your father," Dora said, and the words seemed to suck the air out of the room, "did not just build structures. He built us." Harry shook his head. "That is impossible. You are Noctari. You are a species. You are aliens." "We are engineered," Betty said, her voice unusually quiet. "Enhanced. Adapted for the void. But the design, the architecture of our bloodlight integration," Dora looked Harry in the eye. "The code in your booking, the encryption on the drive we stole, and that locket, they are all the same signature." Harry felt the world tilt. The exhaustion, the adrenaline, the fear, it all coalesced into a singular point of vertigo. "I do not understand," Harry whispered. Dora leaned in, her voice a sharp whisper in the gloom of the station's underbelly. "Your father's name is in our blood." The service elevator shuddered as it bypassed the main promenade decks, descending into the labyrinthine transition zones that separated the glossy, tourist-friendly upper levels from the industrial guts of Kestrel Halo Station. The air here tasted of recycled copper and anxiety. Harry Caldwell sat on a crate of compressed nutrient paste, clutching his knees. The adrenaline from their escape was beginning to curdle into a cold, heavy dread. Beside him, Dora was field-stripping her weapon with mechanical precision, her movements so fluid they seemed like a dance. Betty was pacing the small metal cage, her bloodlight dagger flickering on and off. Snap hiss, like a nervous tick made of lethal energy. "Stop that," Dora said without looking up. "You are wasting charges." "I am thinking," Betty snapped, the red light casting jagged shadows across her pale, sharp face. "Thinking requires rhythm." "You are thinking about stabbing someone," Harry ventured, his voice sounding small in the metallic echo of the shaft. "It is a multitasking effort," Betty replied, flashing him a grin that was all teeth and zero warmth. The elevator ground to a halt. The doors did not open automatically. Instead, they groaned and stuck halfway. Dora stood up, holstered her reassembled weapon, and pried the doors apart with a strength that made the steel shriek. They stepped out into Sector 4, a logistical hub that had been transformed into a nightmare. Before the lockdown, this area would have been a bustling corridor of cargo haulers and maintenance crews. Now, it was a checkpoint. And it was ugly. Director Soren Kale had not wasted time. Portable barricades of hard light energy dissected the wide hallway, funneling the station's population into narrow chutes. The air was filled with the barking of orders from automated drones and the fearful murmurs of hundreds of beings, humans, Noctari, and half a dozen other species, huddled in lines. "Down!" Dora hissed, shoving Harry behind a stack of shipping containers. From their vantage point, Harry could see the segregation in process. To the left, a line for organic standard, mostly humans and solar-based species. They were being scanned, shouted at, but ultimately allowed to pass into the containment zones. To the right was the line for NICT-dependent biologicals, the Noctari. Harry watched his breath catching in his throat. He had always thought of vampires, or Noctari as the scientific manuals called them, as predators. Apex hunters who owned the night. But what he saw now was not a pack of wolves. It was a herd of cattle being led to a slaughterhouse. A Noctari elder, a man whose skin was the texture of parchment and whose hair was wispy white, stumbled as he reached the front of the line. He was leaning heavily on a cane that glowed with a faint amber pulse, a bloodlight reservoir, the artificial energy source that kept his cellular structure stable away from the void. "Device," a security officer barked, holding out a gauntleted hand. The officer was wearing full riot gear, the insignia of Kestrel security, shining under the harsh halogen lights. "It is medical," the old Noctari wheezed. "My stabilizer. I cannot. All unauthorized energy emitters are confiscated under Code Nightfall." The officer recited, his voice amplified and metallic. He snatched the cane. "No!" the old man cried out, reaching for it. "Please." The hunger, the decay. The officer did not listen. With a brutal, efficient motion, he snapped the reservoir from the top of the cane and tossed it into a lead-lined bin. The amber light died. The effect on the old Noctari was immediate and horrifying. Without the stabilizing radiation of the bloodlight, his body seemed to lose its cohesion. He collapsed, his skin turning a bruised, necrotic gray. He gasped, clawing at his throat, as if the air itself had turned to glass. "Move him," the officer commanded. Two drones swooped down, grabbing the convulsing man by his arms and dragging him toward a holding cell that looked more like a cage. Harry felt a surge of nausea. "They are killing him," he whispered. "That is not security. That is slow suffocation." "It is control," Dora said softly. Her face was pressed against the cold steel of the container, her eyes tracking the officer's patrol pattern. "Kyle knows the Noctari physiology. Take away the light and we become weak, frantic. Easier to demonize because we look like monsters when we starve." "We should kill them," Betty whispered. She wasn't smiling anymore. Her hand was gripping the hilt of her blade so hard, her knuckles were white. "3 guards, 2 drones. I can take the left flank. Dora takes the right. The Dork creates a distraction, maybe he can trip over his own feet loudly." "No," Dora said. "We engage. We trigger the heavy turrets. We die and the data dies with us. Then Kale wins everything." "So we just watch?" Harry asked, his voice trembling with a mix of fear and a newfound burning anger. "We just watch them torture old men." "We survive," Dora said, though her voice was tight. "Survival is the only revenge that lasts." She grabbed Harry's collar, pulling him away from the sight of the dying elder. "Move. We need to get to the medical bay. Dr. Park is the only contact who hasn't been burned." The medical bay was a chaotic sanctuary. It was located in the mid-levels, a place that usually dealt with space sickness and minor industrial accidents. Tonight, it was a triage center for a war that hadn't officially started yet. Dr. Anya Park looked like she hadn't slept in 3 days. She was a human woman with graying hair tied back in a severe bun, and a lab coat stained with various fluids, most of them synthetic. She was currently shouting at a medical drone that was trying to administer the wrong dosage of painkiller to a weeping child. "Cancel protocol," Anya yelled. "Manual override. If you inject him with that, his liver will shut down, you glorified toaster." The drone beeped a sad apology and retreated. Anya turned, wiping sweat from her forehead, and froze when she saw the trio slipping through the rear service door. "You have got to be kidding me," Anya sighed, her shoulders slumping. "Dora, Betty, and—" She squinted at Harry. "Who is the stray, please? Tell me he is not a hostage. I do not have the paperwork for hostages." "He is an asset," Dora said, closing the door and locking it. "Harry Caldwell. He is with us." "I am a tourist," Harry corrected, raising a hand. "I booked a room. It went poorly." Anya looked at Harry, then at the blood smear on Betty's armor, not hers, and the exhaustion etched into Dora's usually stoic face. She didn't ask questions. She just pointed to a storage room at the back. "Get in there. Security swept this place 20 minutes ago. They will not be back for another 2 hours. But if you make a sound, I will sedate you myself and sell your organs to pay for bandages." Inside the storage room, surrounded by boxes of sterile gauze and biogel, the tension finally broke. Or rather, it shifted. Betty sat on a crate, ripping open a packet of nutrient gel with her teeth. Dora leaned against the wall, peeling off her tactical glove, to reveal a nasty burn on her forearm, likely from a grazing laser shot during their earlier escape. Harry watched as Dora hissed in pain. Without thinking, he grabbed a first aid kit from the shelf. "Let me," Harry said. Dora looked at him surprised. "I can handle it." "I know you can," Harry said, opening a canister of dermal regenerator. "But you are shaking. Adrenaline crash. Just sit still." He applied the gel. His hands were steadier than they had been when holding a gun. He was good at fixing things. Circuits, engines, broken toasters. People were just softer machines. "Why are they hunting you specifically?" Harry asked quietly as he worked. "The news said you killed the ambassador, but you didn't." "We are Unit 7, Dora said. She stared at the wall, her eyes unfocused. "Ghost operatives. We were created by the old station administration to handle discrete problems. When Kale took over security, he didn't want loose ends. He disbanded us. Or tried to." "Disbanded means liquidated," Betty mumbled around a mouthful of gel. "He tried to blow up our transport during a routine transfer. We survived. He didn't like that." "So this assassination," Harry started. "A play," Dora said. "The ambassador was going to petition the Galactic Council to investigate Kale's budget allocation. Kale silenced him and blamed the rogue biological weapons. Yes. 2 birds, 1 stone." Harry finished wrapping the bandage. "So you are not sisters biologically?" Betty laughed, a dry, rasping sound. "No. We were vat-grown in different batches, different gene sequences. She is the diplomat model, calm, tactical, boring. I am the vanguard model, high aggression, fast reflex, charming personality." Dora looked at Betty, and for a second, the icy mask slipped. There was a profound, weary affection in her eyes. "We are not sisters by blood," Dora said. "But when you spend 10 years watching someone's back in the void, sharing the same bloodlight ration, when the supply runs low, biology becomes irrelevant." "We are each other's last bad habit," Betty muttered, looking away. "I cannot shake her. She is too stubborn to die, so I have to stick around to make sure she doesn't trip." The door to the storage room burst open. It was Dr. Anya. "I need hands," she said, her voice tight. "Not the assassin kind, the carrying kind. We have a hull breach in the lower residential district. Refugees are pouring in. The power grid for the life support in the waiting area just died. I have 30 people who are going to freeze in 20 minutes if I do not get the backup generator online." Dora stood up. "I can reprogram the grid." "No," Anya said. "You step out there, the facial recognition scanners will flag you in a nanosecond. You stay hidden." She looked at Harry. "You, tourist. You have hands. You have a pulse. Come with me." Harry hesitated. "Me, I am trying to hide." "And those people are trying to breathe," Anya snapped. "Move." Harry looked at Dora. She gave him a slight nod. Harry followed the doctor out. The waiting area was a scene from a disaster movie. Families huddled under emergency blankets. The air was frigid. The station's environmental controls in this sector had been diverted to the security blockade. Harry saw a generator unit in the corner. It was an old, clunky fusion cell model, sputtering and coughing smoke. A young medic was kicking it, trying to get it to start. "Stop kicking it!" Harry yelled, running over. "You will misalign the magnetic coil." He shoved the medic aside gently and popped the maintenance panel. It was a mess of wires and bypasses. It was beautiful. This Harry understood. This wasn't politics or murder. This was just inputs and outputs. "I need a wrench," Harry shouted, "and a piece of copper wire. And does anyone have a piece of gum or adhesive putty?" For the next hour, Harry Caldwell did not think about his father or the assassins in the closet. He worked. He stripped wires with his teeth. He rerouted power from a vending machine to the heating unit. He lifted heavy crates of supplies that the exhausted medical staff couldn't manage. At one point, a security drone hovered by scanning the crowd. Harry froze, holding a heavy oxygen tank. The drone's red eye swept over him. "Subject human male. Status civilian laborer. Threat minimal." The drone moved on. Harry let out a breath. He wasn't a threat. He was just the help. And for the first time in his life, being the invisible, useful Dork felt like a superpower. When the heaters finally hummed to life, filling the room with warm air, a cheer went up from the refugees. An old woman pressed a packet of dried fruit into Harry's hand. She didn't speak his language, but she patted his cheek. Harry stood there covered in grease, holding a bag of space raisins, and felt a strange warmth in his chest that had nothing to do with the heater. He went back to the storage room. Dora and Betty were waiting. "You smell like burned ozone and charity," Betty commented. "I fixed the heater," Harry said, tossing the fruit packet to her. "And I got us a lead." Dora straightened up. "Explain." "While I was under the floorboards rerouting the power," Harry said, "I tapped into the localized chatter. There is a broker operating out of the darker side of the snow dome. Someone who claims to have the other half of the data you stole. A guy named Ravel Jax." Betty's eyes widened. "Jax, the Weasel. He is on the station." "Apparently," Harry said. "And if he has the data, we can prove the video is fake." Getting to Ravel Jax required leaving the relative safety of the medical bay and crossing into the edge of the snow dome, the massive artificial winter resort that took up the center of the station. They moved through the service tunnels again, guided by Harry's newfound confidence in navigating the station's schematics. He had downloaded a layout from the generator's terminal. They emerged in an alleyway, behind a neon-lit bar called the Frostbite. The air here was colder, smelling of synthetic pine and expensive alcohol. Ravel Jax was waiting in a private booth at the back of the bar. He was a Rhodian-esque creature with multifaceted eyes and nervous, twitchy fingers that played with a stack of credit chips. "Dora Vale," Jax hissed his voice, like dry leaves skittering on pavement. "And the little knife sister. And a human who looks like he got lost on the way to the library." "He is with us," Betty growled, placing her hand on the table. The wood smoked slightly, where her bloodlight blade was concealed in her sleeve. "Cut the pleasantries, Jax. You message the encrypted channel. You have the master file." "I have access," Jax corrected. "Information is a commodity, my dears. And right now, the price of truth is very high." "We do not have credits," Dora said calmly. "We have a data chip with the encryption key. You have the file. Neither is useful without the other." Jax clicked his mandibles. "A trade, classical. I like it." He slid a holographic projector onto the table. "I pulled this from the backup servers before Kale scrubbed them. Watch closely." The hologram flickered to life. It showed the hallway outside the ambassador's suite. Two figures appeared wearing suits identical to Dora and Betty's. They moved fast. They struck the guards. They breached the door. "It looks like us," Betty whispered, horrified. "Look at the legs," Harry said, pointing at the hologram. "What?" Jax asked. "The stride," Harry said. "Nocteri have a double-jointed tarsal bone, right? It gives you that fluid, gliding walk. Look at the attacker on the left. When she pivots, her heel hits the ground hard. That is a human stride. A human wearing motion assist armor to mimic speed." Dora leaned in, her eyes narrowing. "He is right. And the heat signature, look at the dissipation from the suit vents. A real Noctari body runs colder than the environment. Those suits are venting heat. Those are humans inside." "Mimics," Betty spat. "Kale dressed his own goons in our colors." "Exactly," Jax said, turning off the hologram. "But this is just a copy, a low-res backup. The original with the biometric metadata that proves who is inside those suits, that is in the Aurora Vault. The Aurora Vault, the central data core of the entire station, the most secure room in the sector." "We need to get into the vault," Dora said. "If we broadcast the biometric data from the original file, the station's AI will recognize the fraud. It will override Kale's lockdown." "The vault is inside the snow dome," Jax said, leaning back. "In the middle of the Winter Wonderland Festival, which is currently crawling with Kale's elite guard. It is suicide." "It is Tuesday," Betty shrugged. "I can get you in," Jax said. "There is a maintenance hatch behind the artificial glacier, but it will cost you." "Cost what?" Harry asked. "The chip you stole," Jax said, pointing to Dora's belt. "The one with the encryption key. You use it to open the vault, you get your truth. Then, you give the chip to me. It has other codes on it. Codes I can sell to the highest bidder on the black market. Deal, Dora said instantly. Dora, Betty hissed. That chip is our insurance. The truth is our insurance, Dora replied. The truth is slower, Betty argued, her voice rising. We know where Kale is. He is in the command tower. We can bypass the vault. We go straight to the tower, we cut his throat, and this ends. We do not need to prove anything to these people who hate us. If we kill him without proof, Dora said, her voice turning to steel, we confirm everything he said about us. We become the monsters. We need to clear our names. For the unit. For the old man who died at the checkpoint. Betty looked at Harry. You tell her that being a hero gets you dead. Harry looked between the two sisters. He saw the pain in Betty's eyes, the desperate need to strike back at a world that hurt her. He saw the resolve in Dora's, the burden of leadership, of trying to be better than what they were made to be. Betty, Harry said softly. My father, he disappeared. I spent 15 years angry. I wanted to find whoever made him leave, whoever took him and hurt them. But if I do that, if I just lash out, I am just another angry thing in the dark. Dora is right. If we do not change the story, nothing changes. Betty stared at him. Then she spat on the floor. Fine. We do it the hard way. But if I die in a fake snowdrift, I am going to be very annoyed. The snow dome was a miracle of engineering and a monument to excess. Under a massive transparent dome that looked out into the stars, a perfect winter landscape had been constructed. Pine trees genetically modified to survive low-gravity hills of glistening white snow, and a frozen lake where tourists usually skated. Now, it was a hunting ground. The festive lights were still on garish reds and greens twinkling in the trees, but the music had been cut. Searchlights from hover drones swept the snow. Harry, Dora, and Betty moved through the tree line near the artificial glacier. They were dressed in white thermal ponchos. Jax had provided crude camouflage, but effective against visual scanning. Patrol at 2 o'clock, Dora whispered. 2 guards walked past, their boots crunching loudly on the frozen ground. They were leading a K9 unit, a cybernetic hound that sniffed the air for bloodlight signatures. Harry held his breath. He was terrified, but it was a different kind of fear than before. It was focused. They are guarding the perimeter heavily, Betty noted. But the center is open. They expect us to hug the walls. We go across the lake, Dora decided. It is exposed, but it is the fastest route to the vault entrance under the central pavilion. They moved out onto the ice. It was slippery. Harry stumbled, his boots struggling for grip. Dora caught his arm. Steady. I am not built for this, Harry whispered. I am built for office chairs and mild climate control. You are doing fine, Dora said. They reached the middle of the lake. The station's rotation simulated gravity, but out here on the ice, it felt lighter, dreamlike. Above them, through the dome, the nebula of the Kestrel sector swirled in purple and gold. For a moment they stopped. The beauty of it, the fake snow against the real stars, was overwhelming. Dora looked at Harry. The harsh lights of the drones were far away. In the ambient glow of the nebula, her face was softened. She reached out and adjusted the collar of his poncho. Your pulse is racing again, she said quietly. I am standing on a frozen lake with a super assassin, Harry said, and I am about to break into a government vault. My pulse should be racing. It is not fear this time, Dora observed. Harry looked at her. Really looked at her. He saw the weariness behind the warrior mask. He saw a woman who had been fighting a war she didn't start since the day she was born. When this is over, Harry said, his voice catching, when we clear your names, what will you do? I do not know, Dora admitted. I have never planned that far ahead. Soldiers do not usually get retirement plans. Maybe you can try a holiday, Harry said. A real one. With a bed you do not have to fight for. Dora's lips twitched a ghost of a smile. Maybe, Suddenly Betty's voice hissed in their earpieces. I hate to interrupt the romance novel, but we have company. Drone swarm, 12 o'clock high. Harry looked up. A cluster of drones, like a swarm of angry hornets, was descending from the dome ceiling. Run! They sprinted across the ice. The drones opened fire stun bolts that cracked the ice around them. Slide! Dora yelled. She grabbed Harry and threw him forward. He slid on his stomach, spinning across the smooth surface. Betty was skating on her boots, deflecting bolts with her energy blade, sending sparks flying into the night. They crashed into the snowbank on the far side of the lake, just under the lip of the central pavilion. The hatch, Betty pointed. Hidden behind a holographic snowman was a maintenance access panel. Harry scrambled over to it. It is locked, Harry shouted. Biometric seal. It needs a level 5 clearance. Use the chip, Dora yelled, firing her sidearm at the approaching drones. The chip is for the data, not the door, Harry panicked. He looked at the panel. It was a standard hand scanner. Move, Betty screamed. They are charging a plasma round. Harry didn't think. He didn't have a hacking tool. He didn't have a code. He just slammed his hand onto the scanner. He expected a red light. He expected a siren. He expected to die. Instead, the panel let out a cheerful ping. A robotic voice, smooth and polite, spoke from the speaker. Welcome back, Administrator Caldwell. It has been 3,400 days since your last login. Access granted. The hatch hissed open. Harry stared at his hand. He stared at the scanner. Administrator, Betty yelled, diving into the hole. Get in! Dora grabbed Harry and dragged him into the darkness of the tunnel, just as a plasma bolt incinerated the holographic snowman where he had been standing. The hatch slammed shut above them, sealing out the noise of the drones. They were in a silent, blue-lit corridor. The air was cool and filtered. Dora pinned Harry against the wall again, but this time she looked terrified. Administrator Caldwell, she repeated. That scanner didn't just recognize your biology. It recognized your authority. Harry looked at his hand, trembling. My father wasn't just an engineer, was he? No, Dora whispered, the revelation sinking in. He was the architect. Harry, you did not just break into the vault. You own it. Betty looked down the corridor toward the massive door at the end that led to the Aurora vault. Well, Betty said, a dark grin forming on her face. That complicates things. In a fun way. Harry swallowed hard. The locket burned against his chest. The station wasn't just a building. It was a legacy. And apparently, he had just inherited the keys to the castle and all the monsters inside it. The corridors of the Aurora Vault access tunnel were bathed in the sterile, icy blue light of the station's deep infrastructure, but on the holographic screens embedded in the walls, the world was burning red. Director Soren Kale's face was everywhere. It was projected on the bulkhead monitors, it flickered on the wrist comms of the security teams, and it dominated the massive public screens in the promenade decks above. Citizens of Kestrel Halo, Kale's voice was smooth, a velvet shroud over a steel cage. We have confirmed the identity of the terrorists. They are rogue biological weapons. Noctari units designated Dora and Betty. They are unstable. They are hungry. And they are currently hiding among you. Harry Caldwell stared at the screen. The feed cut to a grainy, shaky video. It showed a Noctari or something that looked exactly like one, tearing through a blast door with inhuman strength, snarling at the camera. It was visceral. It was terrifying. And it was completely fake. He tampered with the frame rate, Harry muttered, pointing at the screen. Look, the shadow lag on the door. He sped up the footage by 15% to make the movement look unnatural, like a monster. It does not matter if it is fake, Dora said. She was standing by the sealed blast door of the vault, her interface cable jacked into the locking mechanism. Her face was illuminated by the scrolling code on her visor. It only matters that they believe it. They believe it, Betty said from the shadows. She was sharpening her bloodlight dagger against the metal wall, a rhythmic shing 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 that set Harry's teeth on edge. I can hear them upstairs. The mob. They are smashing the windows of the nocturnal district. They are dragging people out into the light. That is why we need the data, Dora said, her fingers flying across a holographic keypad. Magistrate Celine Hark has docked. I tracked her shuttle. If we can broadcast the unedited logs to her frequency during the hearing, Cale is finished. Or, Betty said, stopping her sharpening. She stepped into the light, her eyes burning with a cold, lethal fire. We stop playing lawyer. We go to the command tower. We cut the power. We find Cale in the dark. And I remove his head. Betty, Dora warned. No, Betty snapped, her voice cracking with frustration. He is hunting us like animals, Dora. He is using that woman Hark as a shield. He is laughing at us. You want to show him a drive, I want to show him his own intestines. It is a much more direct message. If we kill him, Dora turned, ripping the cable from the port, we prove him right. We become the nightmares he is selling to the galaxy. I do not care about the galaxy, Betty shouted. I care about us. I care that you are bleeding. I care that we are going to die in a hallway because you want to be noble. The sisters stood chest to chest. The air between them crackled with tension, thicker than the shielding on the reactor core. Betty's blade was active, humming a dangerous red. Dora's hand hovered over her stun baton. Harry stood there, clutching his heavy bag of tools. He felt incredibly small, incredibly soft, and incredibly out of his depth. He was a man who fixed ventilation fans, and he was standing between two living weapons debating the philosophy of murder. Excuse me, Harry said. They ignored him. I said, Harry raised his voice. Excuse me. Betty turned her glare on him. Stay out of this, Dork. This is family business. Yeah, well, your family business is about to get us all shot, Harry snapped. He surprised himself with the volume of his voice. Can we please postpone the murder until after we stop everyone else from getting murdered? Because right now, there are 3,000 people upstairs who think you eat babies for breakfast. And if we do not open this door in the next 60 seconds, Cale's drones are going to weld it shut with us inside. Silence stretched for a heartbeat. Betty blinked. She looked at Harry, then at Dora. The red glow of her blade retracted. He has a point, Betty muttered. He is annoying, but he has a point. The door is unlocked, Dora said, her voice returning to its professional chill. But there is a complication. The gravity plating in the transition corridor has been inverted. Harry looked at the massive circular door as it groaned open. Beyond it lay a long, cylindrical hallway leading to the vault's core. But instead of a floor, there was a ceiling. Debris, loose bolts, a forgotten wrench dust was floating in the dead center of the tube caught between the gravity wells. Anti-grav trap, Harry realized. If we touch the walls, we fall up or down, depending on the polarity. It is a security measure, Dora said. To prevent physical intrusion, we have to jump, straight down the middle. If you drift, the gravity shear will tear your bones apart. Oh, good, Harry said, his voice rising an octave. I was worried it would be easy. Hold on to me, Dora commanded. She didn't wait for permission. She grabbed the back of Harry's harness. Betty, take point. On my mark. See you on the other side. Betty grinned, a feral expression returning. Or in pieces, she leaped. Betty moved like a dart, a black blur shooting through the center of the cylinder. She adjusted her trajectory with tiny bursts from her suit's thrusters, navigating the zero-gravity sweet spot with terrifying grace. Go, Dora said. She launched them. The sensation hit Harry like a punch to the gut. Weightlessness was one thing. He had done zero-G repair work before. But this was different. This was aggressive. On all sides of the tunnel, red warning lights pulsed like a heartbeat, a sunrise of blood. Harry looked down at the walls passing by. They were lined with massive cooling pipes. If he drifted 3 feet to the left, he would fall sideways into them, with the force of a 10-story drop. "Steady," Dora's voice was in his ear, calm and grounding. "Do not flail. Aerodynamics matter even here." They floated through the red haze suspended in the eye of the storm. It was beautiful in a sickening way. The station hummed around them, a massive machine that felt alive. They hit the far airlock with a thud as gravity normalized. Dora landed on her feet, absorbing the impact. Harry landed on his face, absorbing the impact with his nose. "Graceful," Betty commented, pulling him up. "Shut up," Harry groaned, checking for blood. "I am an engineer, not a gymnast." They were in. The Aurora Vault was not what Harry expected. He had imagined a room full of servers, blinking lights, and screens. Instead, it looked like a cathedral. The walls were lined with towering crystalline pillars that pulsed with a soft white light. The air was freezing, kept at absolute zero to preserve the quantum state of the data. In the center of the room stood a single terminal. It was old, an analog interface in a digital world. "That is the core," Dora said. "The original architecture. Kale's systems are built on top of it, but this is the foundation." Harry walked toward it. The locket under his shirt felt hot against his skin. He reached out. His hand trembled. He didn't need a hacking tool. He didn't need a code breaker. He just placed his palm on the interface plate. Identity confirmed. Architect Caldwell. "Welcome home, Adrian." The screen flickered to life. Audio logs began to buffer. Harry stood frozen. He saw the date on the first log. It was from 15 years ago, 2 days before his father disappeared. Play. The voice that filled the frozen chamber was tired. It was raspy, smelling of cigarettes and coffee, just like Harry remembered. "This is Adrian. Log 402. The Noctari integration project is complicated. The genetic splicing is stable, but the morality of it. God, what are we doing? We are building super soldiers to guard a trade route, and we are paying them an addiction. They need the light. We made them need it. It is a leash." Harry's knees gave out. He grabbed the console for support. "He knew," Harry whispered. "He didn't just build the station. He built the leash." Dora and Betty stood silently behind him. They were listening to the voice of their creator, the man who had designed their dependence. "I cannot do it anymore," Adrian's voice continued. "Soren Kale wants to tighten the controls. He wants to install a kill switch in the bloodlight spectrum. I am going to lock the core. I am going to hide the source code where he can't find it. I am leaving. I have to leave. If I stay, they will use Harry to get to me. I have to be a ghost so my son can be a person." Harry stared at the waveform on the screen. A single tear, hot and angry, rolled down his cheek. "He left me to protect me." Harry laughed, a broken, jagged sound. "He left me in a foster home with a fake story about a supply run accident, so he could play hide and seek with his conscience." "Harry," Dora said softly. She placed a hand on his shoulder. It was heavy grounding. "He locked the kill switch. Kale cannot execute us remotely because your father stopped him. He saved us." "He made you—" Harry spun around, shrugging off her hand. "He made you addicts. He made you weapons. And he left me alone for 15 years to wonder why I wasn't good enough to stay for—" "Harry," Betty said. Her voice was surprisingly gentle. "Focus. The data. Look." Harry turned back to the screen. The log continued. "I am archiving the surveillance feeds from the diplomatic spire. Kale is planning something. If anything happens to the ambassador, the proof will be here. File Alpha 9. "That is it," Dora said, leaning in. "File Alpha 9. That is the unedited footage of the assassination." Harry's fingers flew across the keyboard. He was angry. He was furious. But he was also an engineer, and he had a job to do. He isolated the file. He decrypted it with his biometric key. On the screen, the truth played out. Not Noctari shadows, but men in tactical gear, their faces obscured, planting the explosives, shooting the ambassador. And then, a clear audio signature. Kale's voice over the comms. "Clean it up. Blame the vampires. Initiate nightfall." "We got him," Betty breathed. "We actually got him." "We need to broadcast this," Dora said. "Direct uplink to Magistrate Hark's shuttle." Harry initiated the transfer. The progress bar appeared. Uploading 10%, 20%. Suddenly, the room turned red. A siren louder than anything they had heard before shattered the silence. The crystalline pillars turned a violent crimson. Unauthorized access detected. Quarantine protocol initiated. "He found us!" Dora drew her weapon. The massive blast door they had entered through slammed shut. Venting gas hissed from the ceiling. "He is not coming in," Harry realized, looking at the environmental readouts. "He is flushing us out." The floor beneath them shuddered. The entire central platform of the vault began to rise. The ceiling above them spiraled open, like the iris of a giant mechanical eye. "Where does this lift go?" Betty yelled over the siren. Harry looked at the schematics. His face went pale. "It goes to the surface," Harry said. "Right into the middle of the snow dome." "The festival," Dora realized. "He is serving us up on a platter." The platform rose with stomach-churning speed. The cold air of the vault was replaced by the artificial chill of the snow dome. They emerged in the center of the frozen lake, the very same lake they had crossed earlier. But the scene had changed. The winter wonderland was now a fortress. The festive lights were blindingly bright, disorienting. Giant ice sculptures of historical figures loomed around them, like frozen judges. Surrounding the lake on the raised banks of the snow-covered park were Kale's elite guard. Dozens of them. And behind them, drone swarms hovered like vultures. "There," Kale's voice boomed over the public address system. "The terrorists have breached the core. They are attempting to sabotage the station's life support. Citizens stand back. Security engage." "He is lying!" Betty screamed, her voice lost in the vastness of the dome. "It does not matter," Dora yelled. "Cover!" They dived behind the base of a massive ice sculpture, a 20-foot-tall depiction of the station's founding admiral. Laser fire erupted. The ice above their heads shattered, raining razor-sharp shards down on them. The air filled with the smell of ozone and burnt snow. "The upload," Dora shouted at Harry. "Did it finish?" Harry checked his datapad. "Connection severed. Kale is jamming the frequency. We are at 80%. We need a hard line to the transmission tower." "The tower is on the other side of the dome," Betty pointed with her blade. "Through that wall of guns." "We cannot outshoot them," Dora assessed, firing 2 precise shots that took down a drone. "We need a distraction. A big one." Harry looked around. He saw the layout of the festival. To his right, about 50 feet away, was the pyrotechnics launch pad, the fireworks set up for the midnight celebration. "The fireworks," Harry said. "What?" Betty asked, ducking a plasma bolt. "The gravity here is 0.8 standard." Harry spoke fast, his brain shifting into overdrive. "If I override the launch pressure on the fireworks mortars and angle them horizontally—" "We are not shooting fireworks at them, Harry," Dora said. "That is a nuisance, not a weapon." "Not the fireworks," Harry said, grinning manically. "The ice." He pointed to the cluster of sculptures looming over the security perimeter. They were massive, top-heavy, and precarious. "Cover me!" Harry yelled. "Harry, no!" Dora screamed. But Harry was already moving. He sprinted across the open ice, slipping and sliding. Laser fire stitched the ground at his heels. He wasn't a soldier. He ran like a man who was late for a bus, flailing, desperate, and entirely unheroic. He reached the control junction for the pyrotechnics. It was locked. Harry didn't have time for finesse. He smashed the panel with his wrench. He ripped out the safety governor wires. "Okay," Harry muttered, his hands shaking. "Launch angle 0. Propellant pressure 300%. Target the big guy's knees." He slammed the manual ignition. Boom. The mortar tubes didn't launch fireworks into the sky. They exploded outward with the force of a cannon. Canisters of compressed pyrotechnic chemicals slammed into the base of the largest ice sculpture, a towering replica of a starship. The ice groaned. A sound like a cracking mountain echoed through the dome. The sculpture tipped. "Timber!" Betty yelled, watching from behind her cover. The massive structure crashed down right onto the security perimeter. Tons of ice pulverized the barrier, sending guards scattering and crushing two automated turrets. The impact kicked up a massive cloud of snow and ice dust, creating an instant, blinding fog. "Move!" Harry screamed, running back toward them. Dora broke cover, sprinting to meet him. Betty was right behind her. Through the fog, a red laser sight cut the air. It was a sniper drone hovering silently above the chaos, unaffected by the ground tremor. It locked onto Harry's chest. Harry didn't see it. He was too busy trying not to fall on the ice. Dora saw it. She didn't think. She didn't calculate. She simply moved. She threw herself across the gap, tackling Harry into the snow, just as the sniper fired. Zest, thwack. The shot didn't hit Harry. It hit Dora in the shoulder, right at the junction of her armor and her neck. She gasped, a sound of pure shock, and collapsed on top of him. "Dora!" Harry scrambled out from under her. The snow beneath her turned a luminous violet. She wasn't bleeding blood. She was bleeding light. The stabilizer fluid in her suit was leaking, mixing with her own bioluminescence. "I am functional," Dora gritted out, trying to push herself up. Her arm gave way. She slumped back. "You are not functional," Harry yelled, ripping off his scarf to press it against the wound. "You are leaking. You need a seal." Betty slid into the crater beside them. She took one look at the wound, and her face went ghostly pale. "The seal is broken," Betty whispered. "She is losing pressure. If she loses too much blood light, she will destabilize," Harry finished. He knew the biology now. He had heard his father's logs. Laser fire began to probe the fog again. They were pinned. Dora reached up with her good hand and grabbed Harry's jacket. Her grip was weak, trembling. "Harry," she whispered. Her eyes, usually so cold and guarded, were wide open. "Leave me. Take the data. Betty can get you to the tower." "Shut up," Harry said, his voice thick with panic. "Nobody is leaving anybody." "I cannot move fast enough," Dora said. "I am a liability. Please. I cannot watch you die because of me. I cannot lose another one." Harry froze. It wasn't the pain of the wound that was breaking her voice. It was fear. The stoic, unshakable assassin was terrified. Not of death, but of grief. "You are not losing me," Harry said firmly. He looked at Betty. "Help me get her up. We are going into the maintenance tunnels under the grandstand." I saw the hatch when the statue fell. Betty looked at Harry. She looked at her sister, bleeding light into the snow. She looked at the way Harry was holding Dora, not like a piece of cargo, but like she was the most important thing in the universe. For a second, a flash of pure, raw jealousy crossed Betty's face. She had always been the one to protect Dora. She was the sister. She was the partner. But then she saw the way Dora was looking at Harry. It wasn't the look of a protector. It was the look of someone who finally felt safe enough to be protected. Betty let out a sharp breath. She grabbed Dora's other arm. "If you break her," Betty said to Harry, her voice low and dangerous, "I will haunt you, politely. I will move your keys every morning. I will make your socks wet. I will be the ghost in your machine until you go insane." "Deal," Harry grunted, hoisting Dora up. "Now move." They dragged Dora into the service tunnel just as the fog began to clear. Betty welded the hatch shut behind them with her bloodlight blade. They were in the dark again. The sounds of the festival and the battle were muffled above them. Harry slumped against the wall, gently lowering Dora to the floor. He used a tube of industrial sealant from his tool bag to patch her suit. It wasn't medical grade, but it stopped the leak. "That will hold," Harry said, wiping violet fluid from his hands. "For an hour, maybe two." Dora lay there breathing shallowly. The glow in her suit was dim. We have the data, Betty said, holding up the drive. She was pacing, restless energy radiating off her. But the upload failed. We are stuck under the floor, Dora is down, and Kale controls the airwaves. Harry pulled out his datapad. He checked the file again. It is worse, Harry said quietly. What? Betty snapped. The file, Harry said. I am looking at the metadata. The audio of Kale ordering the hit is corrupted. The upload interruption scrambled the last 10 seconds. So we have video of men in masks, Betty said, her voice rising. But no proof Kale sent them. That is worthless. He will just say they were rogue mercenaries. He will spin it. Harry put his head in his hands. We were so close. They sat in the silence of the tunnel. The weight of failure pressed down on them. They had risked everything, blown up an ice sculpture, and nearly died, and they were still losing. Then a sound cut through the gloom. Bzzzt, crackle. It came from the wall. Not from a speaker, but from the conduit pipes themselves, vibrating with a frequency that turned the metal into a diaphragm. Harry! Harry's head snapped up. Harry, do not trust the lights. It was the same voice from the vault. Raspy, tired. But this time it wasn't a recording. It was responding to the ambient noise of the room. Dad, Harry whispered. Betty spun around, her blade igniting. Who is there? The lights, Harry. The voice resonated through the station's bones, barely a whisper, indistinguishable from the hum of the air recyclers. Kyle controls the eyes, but he does not control the nerves. Go to the roots. Go to the darkest place. The sound faded. Harry stared at the wall. He is here, Harry said, his eyes widening. He is not just in the logs. He is in the station. Dora coughed, shifting in her makeshift bandages. What does he mean, the darkest place? Harry stood up. His mind was racing. The despair was gone, replaced by the frantic clicking of puzzle pieces falling into place. The station runs on bloodlight and solar power, Harry said. Everything is lit. Everything is watched. Except one place. The place where the power comes from. The fusion intake. That is suicide, Betty said. The radiation there is lethal. Not for me, Harry said. I am human. I can take a higher rad dose than you two. And if my father is in the system, that is where the hardline connection will be. The one place Kale's wireless jamming cannot touch. He looked at Dora, then at Betty. We are not done, Harry said. Revenge has a pulse. And I think I just heard its heartbeat. The artificial sky of the snow dome had been dimmed to a suffocating twilight, a deliberate choice by director Soren Kale to turn the central plaza into a theater of judgment. The festive lights that had previously twinkled with holiday cheer were now harsh white spotlights, all trained on the raised platform in the center of the frozen lake. It was no longer a resort. It was a courtroom carved from ice and fear. Magistrate Celine Hark sat upon a raised dais that had been hastily constructed from modular stage equipment. She looked impeccable in her silver council robes, her face a mask of neutral authority, though her fingers tapped a nervous rhythm on the datapad in front of her. Beside her stood Soren Kale, looking like the grieving hero. His uniform pressed his expression somber. Below them, kneeling in the snow, were Dora and Betty Vale. They were not bound by chains, but by a dampening field, a hexagonal ring of emitters that suppressed their bloodlight resonance. Without it, they looked smaller, paler. Dora's posture was rigid, her chin held high, refusing to look at the jeering crowd that pressed against the security barriers. Betty looked like a coiled spring, her eyes darting around the plaza, calculating murder in 3 different dimensions. The crowd was a mix of terrified tourists and angry station residents. They held signs. They shouted slurs against the Noctari. Kyle had done his work well. He had turned a holiday inconvenience into a species war in less than 12 hours. Citizens, Kale's voice boomed over the amplifiers, silencing the roar. We are not here to exact revenge. We are here to ensure safety. These two entities have been identified as the primary biological weapons used in the assassination of Ambassador Vorex. They are unstable. They are lethal. And under Station Law, Section 4, Paragraph 2, I am petitioning the magistrate to remand them to my custody for immediate neutralization. Neutralization, Betty spat loud enough for the front row to hear. Fancy word for execution behind a soundproof door. Silence, Cale commanded, his voice smooth. He turned to Selene. Magistrate, the evidence is irrefutable. We have the video logs. We have the weapon signatures. Delaying this only puts more human lives at risk. Selene Hark frowned, looking down at the two women. Director Cale, the counsel, prefers transport and trial at a central hub. Summary execution is frowned upon. These are not citizens, magistrate, Cale said, his voice dropping to a conspiratorial, sorrowful tone. They are military hardware that malfunctioned. You do not put a broken missile on trial. You dismantle it before it explodes. The crowd murmured in agreement. Fear was a powerful accelerant, and Cale was pouring it by the gallon. Magistrate! The shout came from the edge of the security perimeter. It was cracked, desperate, and entirely lacking in authority. The crowd parted, not out of respect, but out of confusion. Harry Caldwell pushed his way through. He looked terrible. His mechanic's jumpsuit was stained with grease and blue coolant fluid. His face was smeared with soot. He was panting, clutching a datapad, like it was a holy relic. Beside him, Dr. Anya Park walked with a grim determination, her white coat serving as a badge of office that made the security guards hesitate to club them down. "Who is this?" Selene asked, adjusting her glasses. "Oh, witness," Anya Park announced, her voice cutting through the cold air. "I am Dr. Anya Park, Chief Medical Officer of Kestrel Halo, and this man has evidence regarding the assassination." Cale's smile did not falter, but his eyes hardened into chips of flint. "Ah, the tourist. Mr. Caldwell, I believe, the one who was seen conspiring with the accused." "I was not conspiring," Harry stammered, stepping onto the ice. He slipped, slightly flailing his arms to regain balance, which ruined his heroic entrance. "I was fixing things. That is what I do." "And what are you trying to fix now, Mr. Caldwell?" Cale asked, amused. "The truth," Harry said. He held up the datapad. "Magistrate, the video director Cale showed you, it is edited. The frame rates on the attackers do not match Noctari physiology. I have the metadata here. It shows the file was tampered with 4 hours after the alleged attack." Harry tapped the screen, projecting a holographic display into the air. It showed the jagged lines of code, the timestamps, and the digital fingerprints of the editing software. "Look at line 400. Harry pointed, his hand shaking. "That is a masking algorithm. It pastes a Noctari skin over a standard human tactical suit. The people who killed the ambassador were humans. They were humans on Cale's payroll." A ripple of shock went through the crowd. Selene Hark leaned forward, her eyes narrowing as she scanned the projection. "This is a serious accusation, Director," Selene said slowly. "This metadata appears authentic." Cale did not panic. He did not scream. He simply sighed, the sound of a disappointed parent. "Magistrate," Cale said, walking to the edge of the platform to look down at Harry. "Mr. Caldwell is a talented mechanic. I will give him that. Talented enough, it seems, to bypass a level 5 security lock on the Aurora vault." Harry froze. Cale turned to the crowd, spreading his arms. "Ask yourselves, how does a budget traveler, a man who fixes ventilation ducts, crack the most secure data core in the sector, unless he had help, unless he had codes?" Cale gestured to a screen behind him. It displayed Harry's personnel file, flagging the biometric entry at the vault. "Access granted to Administrator Caldwell," Cale read aloud. "Tell me, Harry, how do you have administrator privileges unless you stole them, unless you are part of the deep cover cell that these creatures operate?" The crowd turned back. The sympathy vanished. They didn't see a whistleblower anymore. They saw a hacker, a traitor. "I didn't steal it," Harry said, his voice small. "It is inheritance. My father." "Your father," Cale interrupted, his voice dripping with mock pity. "A convenient ghost story. The truth is simpler, citizens. This man is compromised. He has been seduced by the enemy. He is not a witness. He is an accomplice." "He is not an accomplice," Betty yelled, straining against the dampening field. "He is just a dork. Look at him." "Betty, help me out here," Harry hissed. "I am helping," Betty shouted. She looked at Cale, then at the magistrate. "You think this man is a mastermind. You think he is a super hacker. Lady, look at his shoes. He tied them with a double knot because he is afraid they will come undone. Last night, I watched him try to open a jar of pickles for 10 minutes before he gave up and asked a drone to do it. He cannot even open a pickle jar. You think he opened your vault?" A few people in the crowd snickered. The tension in the air fractured slightly. It was absurd. It was human. It made Harry look less like a villain and more like, well, Harry. Celine. Hark looked at Harry, really looked at him. She saw the grease, the fear, the utter lack of malice. "The metadata deserves investigation," Celine ruled. "Director, I am suspending the transfer order until—" "I invoke the blood oath," Dora said. The silence that followed was absolute. Even the wind seemed to stop. Dora stood up. The dampening field hummed angrily, trying to push her down, but she stood through the pain, her spine straight as a steel rod. "What did you say?" Cale asked, his voice losing its theatrical polish. "The blood oath," Dora repeated, her voice projecting clear and cold to every corner of the plaza. "Under the Armistice Treaty of Sector 7, a Nocturi accused of a capital crime on a neutral station has the right to trial by combat. If I win, our innocence is proven. If I lose, you can execute us both right here." "That is an archaic tradition," Cale scoffed. "We are civilized people." "Are you?" Dora challenged. "You want to kill us. I am offering you a chance to do it legally. Or are you afraid, Director, afraid that without your lies, you are just a bureaucrat with a stolen badge?" The crowd began to murmur again. This was a spectacle they understood. A duel. It was primal. It was fair in a way that politics never was. "Accept it," someone shouted from the back. "Let them fight," another voice cried. Celine Hark looked at Cale. "The treaty is technically still active, Director. If she invokes it, you must answer, or release them." Cale looked at the crowd. He looked at the cameras. He was trapped by his own theater. If he refused, he looked weak. If he accepted, a cruel smile slowly spread across Cale's face. "Very well," Cale said. "I accept. But as the accuser, I am not required to fight personally. I choose a champion." He snapped his fingers. From the shadows of the security entrance, a figure emerged. It was massive, 7 feet tall, clad in sleek black armor that seemed to absorb the light. It moved with a disturbing jerky speed. Its face was covered by a helmet that had no eyes, only a smooth black visor. "My personal bodyguard," Cale announced. "Unit Omega." Harry looked at the figure. His engineer's brain started screaming. The proportions were wrong. The center of gravity was too low. "Dora, no," Harry whispered. "That thing is not right." "It does not matter," Dora said, stepping out of the dampening field as Cale deactivated her sector. "It is the only way." She looked at Harry. For a brief second, the icy warrior mask slipped. She looked terrified, not for herself, but for what would happen to him if she failed. "Stay behind the barrier, Harry," she said softly. "And if I fall, run." Dora stepped into the center of the circle. The snow crunched under her boots. She drew her stun baton. Her lethal weapons had been confiscated. Cale tossed a similar baton to Unit Omega. "Begin," Celine Hark ordered. The fight was fast, terrifyingly fast. Dora moved like liquid mercury. She was a dancer of violence, feinting, striking, spinning. She landed 3 hits in the first 5 seconds, cracks of thunder against the black armor of her opponent. But Unit Omega didn't flinch. It didn't react to pain. It simply absorbed the blows and swung back with the force of a hydraulic press. Dora ducked a swing that would have taken her head off. She rolled, coming up behind the giant, and drove her baton into the back of its knee, a classic joint lock takedown. The giant didn't buckle. Instead, its leg rotated 180 degrees, an anatomically impossible move, and kicked her backward. Dora flew 10 feet, skidding across the ice. She gasped, clutching her ribs. "He is cheating!" Betty screamed from inside her containment field. "That is not a person, that is a rig!" "Silence," Kale shouted. "It is a bio-augmented soldier. Perfectly legal." Dora got up. She was slower now. Blood, dark and viscous, was seeping from her side. Unit Omega advanced. It dropped the baton. From its gauntlets, blades extended. Not metal blades. Bloodlight blades. But they were wrong, jagged, unstable, crackling, with a sickly green hue. "He has bloodlight tech," Harry realized, gripping the barrier. "He stole their tech and twisted it." Dora engaged again. She parried the green blades with her baton sparks, showering the snow. She was fighting for her life, for her sister, for the truth. But she was exhausted, injured, and fighting a machine wearing a man's shape. Unit Omega caught her baton. With a sickening crunch, it crushed the weapon in one hand. With the other, it backhanded Dora. She hit the ice hard. She didn't get up immediately. The giant stood over her, raising the green blades for a killing stroke. "Finish it," Kale ordered, his voice trembling with anticipation. "No." The shout didn't come from Betty. It came from Harry. Harry Caldwell, the man who couldn't open a pickle jar, vaulted over the security barrier. He didn't have a weapon. He didn't have armor. But he had his heavy tool bag, and he had the desperation of a man who had spent his whole life watching people leave him, and who had decided firmly and finally that he was done watching. Harry slammed into the side of the arena, not running toward the giant, but toward a pile of emergency rescue gear that had been left near the collapsed ice sculpture from the previous night. He grabbed the Jaws of Life, a massive hydraulic pneumatic cutter used for prying open crashed starship bulkheads. It weighed 40 kilograms. It was bright yellow and ugly. Harry roared a sound that was half scream, half sob, and heaved the cutter up. As Unit Omega brought the blades down, Harry threw himself between the monster and Dora. He didn't attack. He held the hydraulic jaws up like a shield. Clang. The green blades slammed into the hardened alloy of the rescue tool. Sparks erupted like a fountain of molten gold. Harry's knees buckled under the impact. He felt something in his back pop. He screamed in pain, but he didn't let go. "Harry!" Dora gasped, looking up at him. He was standing over her, his legs shaking, his face red with exertion, holding back death with a piece of industrial machinery. "I paid for the room," Harry gritted out, blood trickling from his nose. "I get to say who sleeps in it." The giant pulled back for another strike. Harry knew he couldn't take a second hit. His arms felt like wet noodles. "Betty," Harry screamed, not looking back. "Now, do the thing." Betty, who had been waiting for a singular moment of distraction, did not waste it. She didn't have a weapon, but she had rage, and she was standing next to the primary power junction for the plaza's lighting grid. She kicked the junction box open. She didn't hack it. She grabbed the main coolant line and ripped it free with her bare hands, spraying supercooled liquid nitrogen directly onto the hot power couplings. Boom. The plaza plunged into darkness. The spotlights died. The ambient lights died. Only 2 things remained illuminated. Dora's eyes, glowing their natural faint violet, and Unit Omega. Without the overwhelming glare of the stadium lights to mask it, the bodyguard was revealed for what it was. The green blades sputtered. The armor's camouflage emitters failed in the blackout. Under the black shell, the creature glowed, but not with life. It glowed with the frantic strobing light of a leaking fusion battery. Its skin was translucent, revealing gears, pistons, and a terrified, emaciated human wired directly into a metal chassis. It wasn't a soldier. It was a torture victim, turned into a puppet. "Look," Harry yelled into the silence, his voice cracking. "Look at it. That is not a bodyguard. That is a cyborg. Kale is using illegal cyber necromancy." A spotlight from a hovering news drone independent of the grid swung down, illuminating the horrific fusion of meat and machine. The crowd gasped. This was a taboo of the highest order. The council banned the reanimation of the living dead for combat. Celine Hark stood up, knocking her chair over. "Director Kale, explain this abomination." Kale stood on the platform. His face was pale, stripped of all its charm. The play was over. The audience wasn't clapping. They were picking up rocks. "It is necessary," Kale stammered, backing away. "To protect you, to fight the monsters we had to become." "You are the monster," a woman in the crowd screamed. It was the mother of the child Harry had helped at the checkpoint. A rock flew. It hit Kale in the shoulder. Then another. Then a piece of ice. The security guards looked at each other. They looked at the cyborg twitching in the snow. They looked at the angry mob. Slowly, one by one, they lowered their rifles. They were not going to die for this. Kale looked around. His empire of fear had crumbled in 10 seconds, brought down by a mechanic with a pair of pliers and a vampire with a smart mouth. "No," Kale whispered. His eyes darted to the command spire towering above the plaza. "No. If I cannot save the station, I will cleanse it." He tapped his wristcom. A red light blinked on his uniform. "Winter Sun Protocol initialized," a robotic voice announced from the speakers, terrifyingly calm. "Core overload in T-10 minutes." "He is going to blow the reactor," Dora said, struggling to her feet. She leaned heavily on Harry, who dropped the heavy hydraulic cutter with a groan. "He is retreating to the core," Betty shouted, vaulting the barrier now that the power to the dampening field was dead. She ran to them, checking Dora, then punching Harry lightly on the arm. "You are an idiot. A beautiful suicidal idiot." "We have to stop him," Harry wheezed, clutching his lower back. "If he overloads the blood-light fusion mix, it won't just explode. It will emit a pulse that wipes out every biological neural system in the sector. It is a neutron bomb made of light." "The core," Dora said, her eyes focusing. "The entrance is under the spire." They ran. The crowd parted for them now. Not out of fear, but out of hope. The terrorists were the only ones running toward the fire. They chased Kale through the panicked streets, past the frozen fountains, and the abandoned gift shops. They reached the massive blast doors of the central core just as Kale slipped inside. "He sealed it!" Betty yelled, slamming her fist against the metal. "It is magnetic locked! We cannot cut this!" Harry stepped forward. He was in pain. Every inch of his body hurt, but he felt a strange humming in his chest. The locket. He placed his hand on the cold steel. "I do not think I need to cut it," Harry whispered. He closed his eyes. He thought of the voice in the walls. He thought of the man who had left him to build this place. "Open," Harry thought. "Please, Dad. If you are in there, open the door." The heavy mechanisms groaned. The magnetic locks disengaged with a sound like a thunderclap. The blast doors slowly hissed open, releasing a cloud of freezing nitrogen fog. They stepped into the darkness of the core. It was a vast cylindrical chamber dominated by a swirling column of raw energy. In the center, the station's heart. Suspended walkways crisscrossed the abyss. And there, standing at the main console, was Kale. He was typing frantically, his face illuminated by the red warning lights of the impending meltdown. "Stop!" Dora shouted, raising her weapon. Kale turned. He held a detonator in his hand, a dead man's switch linked to the console. "Don't move," Kale snarled. "One step and I accelerate the process. We all burn together." "Why?" Harry asked, stepping out from behind Dora. "Why destroy everything you built?" "Because it is messy," Kale screamed, his composure finally shattering. "Humans, Naktari, Mixing, breeding, trading it is chaos. I brought order. I brought lines you do not cross and you erase them." "The lines were never there," a voice boomed. It didn't come from Harry. It didn't come from the speakers. It came from everywhere. The column of energy in the center of the room pulsed. Cale froze. "Who said that?" The lights in the chamber shifted from red to a soft, blinding white. "Hello, Soren," the voice said. It was deep, warm, and sounded like old paper and engine grease. Harry fell to his knees. He knew that voice. He had hated that voice for 15 years. He had missed that voice for 15 years. "Adrian," Cale whispered the detonator, shaking in his hand. "I told you," the voice of Adrian Caldwell echoed from the machine heart of the station. "I told you that if you ever tried to turn my light into a weapon, I would come back." The central column of light swirled, condensing, taking shape. It wasn't a hologram. It was the station's interface, forming a face made of pure energy, looking down at them with sad, tired eyes. "Harry," the voice said, and the tone softened into something heartbreakingly gentle. "I am sorry I missed your birthday." The central core of Kestrel Halo Station was screaming. It was not a sound of metal shearing or alarms wailing, though those were present too. It was a psychic scream, a vibration that rattled the teeth and hummed in the bone marrow. The Winter Sun protocol had been engaged, and the massive fusion reactor that powered the station's artificial day was beginning to invert. Outside the blast doors in the snow dome, the festive weather had turned apocalyptic. The holographic snow had ceased to be gentle flakes and had transformed into a blinding electromagnetic blizzard. Static electricity arced between the fake pine trees like lightning in a bottle. The station was running a fever, and the heat was rising. Inside the core, on the suspended walkway that bridged the abyss of the reactor, Harry Caldwell held onto a railing that was vibrating so hard it numbed his hands. He locked the manual override. Harry shouted over the roar of the energy vortex below. "The interface is rejecting my biometric key." Director Soren Cale stood on the upper command deck, shielded by a wall of hard light energy. He looked manic, his pristine uniform now disheveled, his eyes reflecting the chaotic swirling colors of the overloading reactor. "You cannot stop it, Harry." Cale's voice was amplified by the room's acoustics, booming like a god from a machine. "The Winter Sun cleanses. It burns out the infection. When the pulse hits, every Noctari on this station will go into metabolic shock. They will fall. And humanity will be the only ones left standing to pick up the pieces. We will be the heroes who restored order." "You are not a hero," Dora shouted. She was pinned down behind a server bank, suppressing fire from 2 automated defense turrets that Cale had activated. "You are a butcher with a god complex. And you are a glitch," Cale retorted, tapping a command on his wrist that sent a swarm of drone flies buzzing toward Dora's position. Betty was 20 feet away, sliding under a burst of laser fire. She was bleeding from a cut on her forehead, the blood bright red against her pale skin, mixing with the sweat of exertion. She looked at Dora, her eyes wide with a frantic, terrifying energy. "We are not going to make it to the upper deck," Betty yelled, reloading her energy cell. "Not with these turrets." "We have to," Dora grit out, firing a precise shot that clipped a drone's wing. "If we die here," Betty shouted, her voice cutting through the noise, "you have to admit it. You liked him, you liked the Dork." Dora ducked as a laser scorched the metal beside her ear. She looked at Betty, appalled and furious. "This is your dying declaration, gossip." "Admit it," Betty screamed, tossing a plasma grenade at a turret. "Shut up and bleed quieter," Dora roared back, breaking cover to sprint toward the next barrier. Harry watched them. He watched these 2 women creatures designed in a lab, hunted by the government, feared by the galaxy, throwing themselves into the line of fire to save a station full of people who wanted them dead. He looked at Cale, safe behind his shield, ready to commit genocide in the name of safety. No, Harry whispered. He turned away from Kale and looked at the primary console of the core. It was a massive monolith of black glass, pulsing with the same rhythm as the reactor. This was where the voice had come from. This was the brain of the station. Harry ran to it. He ignored the heat radiating from the pit. He ignored the sparks showering from the ceiling. He placed both hands on the black glass. "Custodian!" Harry shouted. "I know you are in there. You spoke to me. Talk to me now." For a moment, nothing happened. The chaos continued. Then, the black glass rippled. It was not a screen turning on. It was like ink moving in water. A face formed in the glass, a three-dimensional topography of light and code. It was the face Harry had seen in his dreams for 15 years. It was older, comprised of grid lines and data streams, but the eyes were undeniably the same. "Hello, Harry." The custodian's voice was calm, a stark contrast to the destruction around them. It resonated directly in Harry's auditory implants, bypassing his ears. "You need to stop this," Harry pleaded. "Kale is overloading the fusion mix. He is going to kill thousands." "I cannot stop him," the custodian replied. "My primary command protocols were overwritten by Director Kale 6 months ago. I am restrained. I can watch. I can feel. But I cannot act." "You opened the door for us," Harry argued. "You spoke to me in the tunnels. I utilized a 0.1% energy variance to bypass the locks," the custodian said. "It took me 3 weeks to gather the processing power for that single action. I have no more backdoors, Harry." "Then make one." Harry smashed his fist against the glass. "You are the system. You are the architect." "I was the architect," the custodian corrected gently. "Now I am the memory of him. And memories are fragile things." Harry stared at the digital face. "You know me. You called me by my name." "I know that you broke your arm falling out of a tree when you were 7, the custodian said. "I know you cried because you were afraid you broke the tree, not your arm. I know you keep your tools organized by handle color, not size. I know you, Harry." Harry felt a lump in his throat, the size of a planet. "Dad." "We do not have time for the past," the custodian said, the image flickering as the reactor groaned. "Kale's protocol is 90% complete, but there is a flaw in his logic. He assumes the station is a closed loop." "What do you mean?" "He has isolated the internal comms to control the narrative," the custodian explained. "But the core is connected to the hyperspace relay beacon. It is a hard line. He cannot cut it without shutting down the reactor entirely." Harry's engineer brain snapped into focus. "You mean we can broadcast? Can we send a signal out?" "Not just a signal," the custodian said. "A dump. Everything. The logs. The video of the assassination. The biometrics of his cyborg soldiers. The truth. If we push it through the hyperspace relay, every ship in the sector will see it. The Alliance fleet is patrolling the border. They will see Kale is not a victim. They will see he is the aggressor." "Do it," Harry said instantly. "There is a cost," the custodian said. The face on the screen looked sad. "To push that amount of data through the relay while the reactor is critical, I will have to divert all power from my own containment matrix. I will have to burn my own neural pathways to amplify the signal." Harry stopped. He understood immediately what the AI was saying. "You mean you will die?" Harry whispered. "You will be erased." "I am already a ghost, Harry," the custodian said. "I am just data waiting for a purpose." "This seems like a good one." On the upper deck, Kale was laughing. 1 minute to Winter Sun witnessed the dawn of a new order, Dora screamed, as a drone exploded near her, sending shrapnel into her leg. Betty was out of ammo, swinging her energy blade desperately at the encroaching turrets. Harry looked at them. He looked at Kale. He looked at the face of his father in the machine. "I found you," Harry said, tears blurring his vision. "I just found you." "You never lost me," the custodian said. "I was always in the static, Now choose, Harry. Do we save the station by silence? If I initiate a localized shutdown, I can save the structure, but Kale will escape in the confusion, and the truth stays buried. I survive. Or do we speak? Harry looked at Kale, the man who wanted to build a world on lies and fear. He looked at Dora, who was bleeding to protect a world that hated her. The value of a human, Harry said, repeating the thought that had driven him since the checkpoint, isn't surviving. It is being worth survival. He placed his hand flat on the glass. Send it, Harry commanded. Send it all. Acknowledged, the custodian said. And for the first time, the digital face smiled. The broadcast did not start with a fanfare. It started with a glitch. Every screen on Kestrel Halo Station, from the giant billboards in the snow dome to the personal data pads of the refugees in the medical bay, turned white. Then, the data flooded in. It wasn't a polished news report. It was raw, ugly truth. It was the unedited video of Kale ordering the hit on the ambassador. It was the schematics of the cyborg bodyguards, proving they were illegal reanimated citizens. It was a live feed from the core, showing Kale standing over the overload controls, while Dora and Betty bled to stop him. But it didn't stop at the station. The signal punched through the atmosphere, riding the hyperspace relay beam like a spear of light. It hit the receiver dishes of the United Alliance fleet 3 light-years away. It hit the trading vessels in the orbit. It hit the Noctari clans lurking in the shadow of the asteroid belt. In the core, the black glass of the console began to crack. Smoke poured from the vents as the custodian burned its own circuits to push the signal. "What is this?" Kyle screamed, looking at his wristcom as the truth played out on the tiny screen. "Stop it! Stop the feed!" "I cannot," the automated system replied. "External override. The call is coming from inside the house." Kale looked down at Harry. Harry wasn't hiding anymore. He was standing at the dying console, his eyes locked on Kale. "It is over, Soren," Harry said, his voice calm amidst the chaos. "Everyone knows." Kale's face twisted. The mask of the savior fell away, revealing the terrified tyrant beneath. "If I go down," Kale shrieked, slamming his hand onto the console, "I take the light with me." He didn't try to stop the overload. He tried to accelerate it. He wanted to blow the core manually. "No!" Dora screamed. She vaulted over the server bank. Her leg gave out, but she rolled, coming up with her stun baton. She threw it. It wasn't a lethal throw. It was a distraction. It cracked against Kale's shield, making him flinch. That flinch was all Betty needed. She didn't use the stairs. She scaled the cooling pipes, moving like a spider. She crested the platform railing behind Kyle. She didn't have her blade, she had lost it in the melee. She had nothing but her hands and her teeth. She tackled him. Kale and Betty went down in a tangle of limbs. The hard light shield flickered and died. "Get off me, you mongrel!" Kale shouted, reaching for his sidearm. Betty headbutted him. A brutal, solid sound. Kale's nose shattered. Dora was there a second later, limping but fierce. She kicked the gun away. Kale scrambled back, crawling toward the edge of the platform, toward the drop into the reactor. "Stay back!" Kale yelled, blood streaming down his face. "I will jump, I will end it!" Betty lunged forward, grabbing him by the collar. She held him over the edge. The heat of the reactor blasted them. Kale screamed, his feet dangling over the abyss. "Do it!" Betty snarled. "Let him burn! It is poetic!" Dora stood beside her, her hand on her own knife. She looked at Kale with a hatred that was cold and deep. "He killed our unit. He tortured the old man. He deserves the fall." Harry watched them. This was the moment. The vengeance. It would be easy. It would be satisfying. "Dora. Betty." Harry's voice was quiet, but in the sudden silence of the command deck it carried. They looked at him. "If you drop him," Harry said, walking up the stairs, his steps heavy with exhaustion, "he becomes a tragedy. He becomes the man who died for his cause. He becomes a martyr for every other fanatic out there. Harry stopped next to them. He looked down at Cale, who was whimpering, swinging over the fire. "Don't give him that," Harry said. "Don't let him be a legend. Make him a prisoner." Betty's grip tightened. She wanted to let go. Every instinct in her body screamed for blood. Dora looked at Harry. She saw the same man who had helped a child at a checkpoint, who had fixed a heater for refugees, who had chosen to save a ghost instead of himself. Dora placed her hand on Betty's arm. "Pull him up," Dora said softly. "You are kidding me," Betty spat. "Pull him up," Dora repeated, her voice commanding. "We are not him." Betty let out a scream of frustration, a primal roar, and hauled Cale back onto the deck. She threw him down on the metal grating. Cale gasped, coughing, trying to rise. "You are weak," Cale wheezed, laughing through his broken teeth. "You should have killed me. I will come back. I will spin this. I will." A massive shadow fell over the station. Through the transparent dome of the core ceiling, huge shapes descended. They were not Cale's drones. They were sleek silver and bore the insignia of the United Alliance Navy. "This is Admiral Vance of the UAS Redemption," a voice boomed over the station's emergency frequency. "Director Cale, you are hereby under arrest for crimes against sapience, illegal bioaugmentation, and conspiracy to incite war. Your security codes have been revoked. Stand down or be vaporized." Cale stared up at the ships. He looked at the live feed on the wall, showing Alliance Marines breaching the station's airlocks, not to attack, but to deploy medical teams. He saw human soldiers helping Noctari civilians out of the line of fire. He saw the war he tried to start turning into a rescue mission. His narrative hadn't just broken. It had been rewritten. Kyle slumped. He didn't say anything else. He just looked small. Harry walked over to the main console. The Winter Sun protocol was powering down, overridden by the Alliance's remote hackers. The red light faded to a safe, steady blue. But on the black glass, the face of the custodian was fading too. The lines of code were unraveling. "We did it," Harry whispered, touching the screen. "Dad, we did it." The face flickered. It was barely visible now. "I saw," the custodian's voice was faint like a radio signal, drifting into deep space. "Harry, the room." "The room," Harry asked, tears running freely now. "Room 704, the custodian said. "I manipulated the booking algorithm. I needed a variable. I needed someone with my biometrics to access the vault, but I needed someone with a heart to make the right choice." Harry froze. "You set me up. You booked the room." "I couldn't predict the outcome," the voice confessed. "I didn't know if you would be brave enough. I was testing you, because I was too cowardly to finish this myself when I was alive." "You used me as a failsafe," Harry said, a mix of anger and awe in his chest. "I used you as a hope," the voice faded further. "I am sorry, Harry, for the silence, for the test, for leaving." The screen began to go dark. The intelligence was dissipating the energy required to send the broadcast, having consumed the matrix that held the consciousness together. Harry leaned his forehead against the cold glass. He wanted to scream. He wanted to hug the machine. He wanted 15 years of missed conversations. "You picked a terrible way to be a dad," Harry choked out a laugh, breaking through his sob. "Leaving me a galactic conspiracy instead of a savings bond." "I love," the audio cut. The face vanished. The black glass became just glass. The custodian was gone. The architect had left the building. Harry stood there for a long time. He felt a hand on his shoulder. It was Dora. She didn't say anything. She just stood there, leaning her weight against him, offering a silent, solid presence. On his other side, Betty sat on the railing, cleaning her knuckles, but she was watching him with something that looked suspiciously like respect. "He was an idiot," Betty said softly. "But he was a useful idiot." Harry wiped his eyes. "Yeah, he was." Epilogue. 3 days later. The Kestrel Halo Station was still under martial law, but the atmosphere had changed. The fake snow in the dome was white again, pristine and calm. The repairs were underway. Magistrate Selena Hark had taken temporary command. She was efficient fare and currently very busy dismantling Kale's network of corruption. Kale himself was in a maximum security transport, on his way to a tribunal that would likely put him away for 3 lifetimes. Harry sat on a bench near the frozen lake, watching the repair drones fix the ice sculpture he had blown up. His arm was in a sling, and he had a bandage over his nose, but he looked cleaner than he had in days. "You look like a tourist again," a voice said. Harry looked up. Dora stood there. She wasn't wearing her tactical suit. She was wearing civilian clothes, a thick winter coat and a scarf. She looked normal. Beautiful, but normal. "I am a tourist," Harry said, patting the space beside him. "My holiday was just a little more active than advertised." Dora sat down. "The Alliance is granting amnesty to Unit 7. We are free. No longer weapons. Just citizens." "That is good," Harry said. "What will you do?" "I do not know," Dora admitted. She looked at the stars through the dome. "I have never had to choose before." "Choices are the hard part," Harry said. "But they are also the fun part." "Betty is leaving," Dora said quietly. Harry blinked. She says she needs to find out who she is when she is not being my shadow," Dora said. There was sadness in her voice, but acceptance too. "She took a job on a freighter, security detail. She said she wants to stab people in different star systems for a while, expand her horizons." Harry laughed. "That sounds like her." "She told me to tell you." Dora paused, a rare flush coloring her pale cheeks. She said, "Don't be boring." "I will try my best," Harry promised. They sat in silence for a moment, watching the station rotate. The light of the local star hit the snow, making it sparkle. "I still have the room for 2 more nights," Harry said, looking at his hands. "The booking is non-refundable." Dora looked at him. The violet in her eyes seemed to warm up. "It is a small bed," she noted. "I sleep on the edge," Harry offered. Dora smiled a real smile, one that reached her eyes. She leaned in, resting her head on his uninjured shoulder. "We can share," she said. Harry Caldwell, the dork who booked a cheap room to escape his ghosts, looked out at the snow. The ghosts were gone. His father was at rest. And for the first time in his life, he wasn't just fixing something broken. He was building something new. "Okay," Harry whispered to the universe. "Okay." From the departure deck above, a shuttle blasted off, carrying Betty Vale toward the unknown. She watched the station shrink in the viewport, a small smile on her face. She touched the glass, whispering a goodbye to the sister she loved, enough to leave, and the human who had taught her that even monsters could choose to be men. The station spun on a jewel of light in the darkness, held together not by bolts and beams, but by the messy, complicated, unbreakable strength of doing the right thing.